Hey everybody, it's Derek here. Thanks as always for stopping by. Today I want to talk about this book. I gave it 1,000 stars out of 5, and I can't wait to tell you about it. All right, folks, so today we're talking about My Brother, My Land, a story from Palestine. This is written by Sami Hermez. And the primary contributor, in fact, the main story is about Sireen Sawalha. So there are parts of this that it's sort of in different fonts, hey? So you got the narrator, Sami, and then you've got the main character who, this is sort of a memoir by Sireen. And oh my God, what a devastating story. This book is hot off the press. I don't have a physical copy. I just was going on an e-reader, but this was published on February 20th of this year, 2024. So, I mean, it's not been around for long. And my God, if I had any clout around here in Booktube, I would try to make this thing a New York Times bestseller. It's just so heartbreaking, but heartbreaking in a good way. You learn a lot and you get a sense of what life is really like, mainly in the West Bank. You understand what life is like for the average Palestinian with the Israeli encroachment daily, hourly, choking these poor people. You also get a sense of the rise of religiosity, this sort of, I've called it a politics of austerity. I would also call it a politics of atonement that has gripped, and it's not just this lady who's talking about it. There's many, many people in the occupied territories of Palestine who've commented on how the secular and the pluralistic quality of these areas has been replaced with a kind of politics of atonement, feeling like what Palestinians are going through is a punishment from God. And in order to, sort of restore the glory days of Palestine and the Arab world overall, Muslims sort of have to find their way back to God, so to speak. So you get this rise of Puritanism or piety, because people feel like, well, this is what happens to people when they're oppressed. And you add the religious component to it, whereas you compare it to, especially like Ramallah 50 years ago or earlier, was remarkably secular. And it's not just one or two authors who've said that. There's many people who've commented and observed this reality on the ground. And Israel likes to weaponize that, because they portray themselves as being perfectly secular when they're actually driven by the friggin' religious nut jobs in the Likud party who are Zionists, and they present the Muslim world as just the most backwards, barbaric things that you can think of. And it's not the way. It really does echo like Jim Crow speech. It's really quite disgusting how the Islamic world has been presented and how the Arab world has been presented overall. So that's why I've been looking into more of these biographies, because I want that ground level perspective. I really do like the grand historical tour d'horizons, if you will, or like a survey of what are the main conflict points and what was behind them. There's a lot to be said for that. I mean, I've talked about the 100 Years' War on Palestine, or Noam Chomsky and Ilan Papp's book on Palestine, their dialogues, or there was another book on the Yom Kippur War. And I'll be reading one on Camp David there the Camp David with Jimmy Carter. And I mean, there's been lots of books like this, The Much Too Promised Land by Aaron David Miller. Lots of these books, they give you the whole history, and that's extremely valuable. But I think it's also important, if you're going to follow this story, to read authors like, Sireen Sawalha and Sami Hermez, because you get a real sense of the dirt on the land, and you're basically walking on these avenues, and you're seeing the religious element to it. I wanted to comment on that. I wanted to take a moment and actually talk about her brother, because it's in the title. It's pretty important. She spends the majority of the time in the book talking about her brother who died in a shootout. And I'm not spoiling the book for you. She mentions that very, very early on in the book. Yeah, he died in a shootout. In the beginning, he was mildly religious, but as he went to prison, long before he became radical in his violent resistance. I mean, talking throwing stones and stuff here, nothing like car bombs yet. He ends up in prison, and what happens with all the oppression? You use the sledgehammer method, it doesn't work. We know that, and this is a perfect example. These people who end up in prison, they become more religious. They become, I mean, it makes sense, right? You see absolutely zero political answers to this problem on the ground. So what's the solution? Of course, people are going to turn to religion as their solution, and they're going to double down on that, and that puts a veto on the peace. I'm not blaming the jihadist elements from the Islamic side for what we're seeing in the Middle East right now. In fact, I place 99.9% of that blame on the Zionists and the Likud party and Israel's track record here. But you can't deny that, extreme Islam is a part of the problem. And certainly it's a problem in terms of what they qualify or what they define as valid resistance. I think the more religiously extreme versions of resistance are apt to be more collectivist. Again, you have to say that with some proportionality relative to what the Israelis are doing. But, there's no denying that that is a part of the picture here. And you have to have an understanding of it if you're going to speak intelligently on the matter. So I highly recommend this book, guys. Like, you will be brought to tears. I certainly was close. If you guys do get to read this and you liked it like I did, please promote it, because I think this is one of the best ways that we can humanize Palestinians, is to show what their life is like, show their culture, show what the average experience is, understanding the complexity of people. Like, you look at this woman, Sireen, she's a human being who has a very complex relationship with Palestine and very complex relationship with her religious tradition that she was brought up around. And I think that would probably represent the majority of the Islamic world, let alone, the Palestinians or Arabs generally. They have a very complex relationship with it. It's not this, inflicting Sharia on the rest of the world or anything like that. So anyway, read it, guys. I want to hear from you. I would love to talk about this book, so please engage me below in the comments, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks for stopping by. Hey everyone, I hope you liked this video. If you want more like the one you just watched, click the suggested video on this screen. Make sure you subscribe, and to connect with me on my other platforms, my handles are linked below in the description, alright? Take care, peeps. Till next time.